Alright, in this chapter we are going to focus on really the most important thing to probably take away from this class, and that is joining tables so you can get at data stored in more than one table. So if you think back to our very first exercise where you had to flip through all the tables manually and look up things in the table, you had to follow the joining keys. The primary key was the foreign key in another table a lot of times, and to make sure that the database lines up the values that are appropriate to each record, you have to be able to join the tables based on those keys. So for example, if you want to see who is guiding what trip in Colonial database, you have to look at the unique identifier, the primary key for the guide, and then pull out records from the trip table where that guide ID exists. And so you need to join those tables together to get at the information. So we're going to look at a lot of different ways to do this. It'll take me a couple of videos to get through this, but we're going to start out with what I prefer as the way to join tables. There are a lot of people like to use subqueries, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video. But in my opinion, that's not really the most efficient way to get at the data that you need. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out simple, and we are going to, I'm going to work with the Solmaris database, the one with the condos in it, just because that's the tables that I have loaded right now. And so we're going to do a simple query, and we're going to try to figure out, well, what we're going to do first of all is we're just going to list the first name, last name, and unit number of all of the owners. If you look at the owner table, their unit number is not listed in that table. What you have to do is you have to join the owner table to the condo unit table, and based on that key relationship you'll be able to pull them out. And so the owner number is a unique number in the owner table, and if you look at the condo unit table, there is an owner number foreign key field. So what we'll do is we'll tell the database to match up those keys and retrieve the associated information. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out with a select statement, and the select statement is going to be all of the fields that you are going to display in your output. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to include these fields from, that you're going to use in your where statements, but these are going to be the values that will show up in your output statement. So we're going to select last name and first name and unit number, and we're going to tell it which tables we're going to use. So in this very first one, we're going to use just two tables, and we're going to separate them by a comma in the from statement. So I'm going to say from the owner table and the condo unit table. Now this is a big mistake. This is where a lot of people like to stop. So let me show you what happens if I run that statement. A join doesn't occur, and so we get a long list of all possibilities. You notice that it shows that Bruce and Jean Adney own all of the condo units, and then it shows that Bill Anderson also owns all of the condo units, and Jack Blake owns all of the condo units, and so forth and so on. It is what's called a Cartesian map, and it puts together all of the possibilities of the joining of these two tables if you don't specify what they're going to join on. So 100% of the time in this class, you will always have a join when you're working with more than one table, or a subquery, which will, like I said, I'll show you next. But you have to tell the database that the Adneys are actually tied to a specific condo unit. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write a where statement, and we're going to say where the owner ID in the owner table is equal to the owner number in the condo unit. So condo unit dot owner num. And so what it does there is it allows you to match up these tables, saying pull this info from these two tables where the owner ID in one table matches that foreign key field in the other. So assuming I have no error, so let's go ahead and run that. And I have an error. So owner ID is owner num. So you just make sure that you have those spelled out properly. Consult your tables often, run, and now we see that the Aldneys actually own their condo unit. Bill Anderson owns 3. Now we do have some people throughout that own more than one, so we will have some repeats, but it doesn't have a free-for-all for where it matches every owner to every condo. Now we can also have a delimiter. We can say, well, now that we have a list of all the condo owners, let's get a list of all the condo owners where the number of bedrooms is over 1. Let's say we want a list of the 2 and 3 bedroom owners. Now I'm going to just type BDRMS greater than 1 and run that, and I'm going to come back and talk about the qualification of this. So now I have even a smaller list, as I've only listed to the condos that meet the criteria of having more than 1 bedroom. So up here I had owner.owner_num and I have condo unit.owner_num, but I didn't put condo_unit.bedrooms. I could have, and it still would have run, but this is a field that doesn't need to be qualified. The reason I had to have the table name and the field name above was I had to qualify that table because owner_num as a field exists in 2 tables in my query. And if you don't qualify which one you're talking about, then you're going to get an error message saying something along the lines of that you have an ambiguous field. But because bedrooms, BDRMS, is only a field found in the condo unit table, I didn't have to qualify that. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Now, as you might imagine, if you're joining lots of tables, this gets a little unwieldy, and qualifying those tables can be a lot of typing. And so before we move on to the next example, because I'm going to use this over and over in our examples, I'm going to show you how to use an alias for a table. And what it does is it allows you to use a shorthand or an abbreviation for the table name. So instead of having to type out owner every time or condo_unit every time, you can rename that table and use it when you're writing your queries. And so what you do is you just put a space after the table in the from. So I'm going to say that I want to call this the O table, and I'm going to put a space here and say that I'm going to call this the U table for unit. And so every time I'm required to type out the word owner, instead of typing it, I can use my abbreviated title here, and it will still run the same way. Okay, but what it does is it allows you, instead of typing owner over and over again, and especially if you have multiple criteria that you're pulling out of the owner table or the unit table, you wouldn't have to use those qualifications over and over again. And we'll see that in a more complex example that I'm going to do next. Okay, so that's a simple join. You join on the primary key and foreign key to make sure that the database matches up the regular ones, the required records, and then you add criteria as needed, just like you did in your single table queries before. Just another note, in your where statements, if you have 4 or 5 different where statements that are ANDed or ORed together, always put your where statement, do your joins first on your primary key, foreign keys, and then add your criteria after the fact. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at another example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to figure out which locations and which condo units have an outstanding or that has a service request that is described as painting. And so this is going to require that we join most of the tables in our database. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with this, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you right ahead of time that I'm going to use my aliases for my table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the fields that I want to show up in my output. So I want to see the category description, Whoops. I took the caps lock key off apparently. I'm going to want the category description. I want the location name, and I'm going to take that from the table location, which I will go ahead and tell you, spoiler alert, I'm going to alias that as L. And I'm also going to take out the condo ID, and again I'm going to do that from a table, the condo unit table that I'm going to alias as U. So let me go ahead and put those in. So now I have my froms. I've taken 3 fields from 3 different tables that I want to display in my output. However, I need more tables than that to get there because category description is not directly linked to location name or condo ID, and I actually have to go through the service request table as well. And so what we're going to do is you have to include that table in your from statement, even though you're not going to actually display any of the data from that table. So I'm going to say I need to take service category. I'm going to alias that as S. I put a comma in. I'm going to take location, which I'm going to alias as L. I'm going to do service request, which I'm going to alias as R, and finally the condo unit table, which I'm going to alias as U. So I have my fields that are going to display. I have my tables that I need for that display, as well as for my joins. I'm going to now join those tables, and you have to kind of hopscotch across those. You have to go from location to condo unit, from condo unit to service request, and from service request finally to the category description that we need. So I'm going to say where L.location num is equal to the location num key in the unit table. I have to pay attention to make sure I don't do those IDs again. And I also want to make sure that the condo ID from the unit table is equal to the condo ID in the request table to make sure that a request exists. And I need to grab the actual word painting, or what the description is, from that last category description table. So I'm going to say and r.category num is equal to c.category underscore num. So this says match these up where the location number from the L table matches up to 1 in the unit table, and on that unit table match up the condo ID to the condo ID that have requests, and then match that category num from that table to the actual table where it spells out painting, plumbing, etc. And see, we have to do this jump in between because there's no way for us to get from this to this table without going through the table in between that has the shared categories. So that's the joins. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another AND statement, and I'm going to say that the C category description is equal to single quote painting. Alright, so I know this isn't going to work. I know we're not going to get any results if we get error after we clear up any errors we have, and I want you to think about while I'm running it why that might be. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and it looks like I have a category description which is an invalid category num. Okay. Okay, looks like I did not pay attention to my aliases. In my example, I said C and typed S. So I have service category S, but then I have category num and category description. So I can either change this here, change my alias to where that should match up. I'm going to go back to the fact that I had this all in capital letters to show you that you have to remember to pay attention. No results, because nothing exactly matches the word painting in all caps. So I just wanted to remind you of that from the last chapter when you were looking for things. So if I change that to lowercase, now when I run this, I should get that there are two condos in Solmeris Bayside that have the issue. So again, sorry for the delay. You have to pay attention, and sometimes even I don't pay attention to this. I had S as my alias but used C down here, and as a result it couldn't find this. So the logic was right, just the attention to detail not so much. Alright, so that right there shows you how to join multiple tables, and you just need to match those primary key and foreign keys up, join those tables together, and get to the end where you need to get. So again, I'm just going to do one more example just so you get the idea of how this works. I'm going to do another select. Let me put my caps lock key back on. I'm going to go ahead and select the owner last name and the unit number. And you can tell that I'm going to use aliases because I have that dot clarification going on. So I'm going to select this from owner O. I'm going to go through the condo unit U, and I'm going to see who has outstanding service requests. So I also need to go ahead and grab the service request R. So this is really not much different than what we've done before, just more examples for you to see how it works. Again, we need to join those things up. If we were going to figure out the owner name and the unit number, whether it exists in the service request table is what's going to determine our output, but nothing is actually going to get displayed from this. We're not going to say that they have a category 1 or that they paid X number. We're actually not going to check to see if, or we're not going to display any data from that table, but we do need to know if the combination of the owner condo unit appear in that. So we're really going to work backwards. Service request, we're going to check for which condo units show up in that table, and then we're going to tie them back to the owner for our display purposes. So it's really not any different than the one we did before, but I just want to show you that you don't necessarily have to pull data from the table. Sometimes you're checking to see if they exist in the table. So we do our joins. So I'm going to say where owner, or my O dot owner num is equal to the owner num in the unit table, and I have a dash there instead of an equal sign. So tie the owner to the condo units, and where the condo ID from the unit table is equal to a record in the request. So that's basically saying find the condo ID number on the request table, match it up to the condo in the unit table, and then match that up to the owner. And so that should allow us to get us a list of all of the people in this. Now, when you're working in the real world, you're familiar with your data, but we can easily look at this and we can see that condo number, I'm looking in my book, condo number 3, which belongs to owner AN175, who is Bill Anderson, should not be in this table because there's not a request for condo unit 3, which belongs to Bill Anderson. And so we can just eyeball that to make sure that the results work out. And we can also add any of our other clauses. If I wanted to order by, we could just order by owner.last name and make that a little bit easier to see that Mr. Anderson wasn't there. So that's pretty much straightforward using the where clause to do your joins. In the next video, what I'll do is I'll look at subqueries, and then we'll look at the unions and intersects, and finally we'll look at the join command themselves.